In our headlines on this Thursday, April 24th, here in South Korea. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok and Trade Minister An Dok-keun will meet with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, local time. Meanwhile, South Korea's gross domestic product contracted 0.2% on quarter during the first quarter of this year to post its deepest decline since the fourth quarter of 2022 amid the ripple effects of the global pandemic. And the Catholic community mourns the passing of Pope Francis, with tens of thousands gathered at the Vatican to bid their final farewell to the Pope, whose body lies in state at St. Peter's Basilica. As top South Korean finance and trade officials prepare to sit down with their U.S. counterparts for talks on tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated hopes for similar talks with China. Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Currently, U.S. President Donald Trump has set tariffs on Chinese imports at 145%. According to the U.S. leader, that number could come down significantly, but it'll be up to China. Trump also hinted a new tariff rate on Chinese imports could be decided in 2 to 3 weeks. He also warned that if there is no deal between the two sides, Washington will unilaterally set the tariff rate. Trump added that if China is unwilling to do business with the U.S., the rate will remain at 145%. The comments come amid reports that the Trump administration is looking into lowering the tariff rate for China to the 50 to 65% range. Trump also hinted at de-escalating tensions with China by saying on Tuesday that 145% is too high and that it will come down substantially. Meanwhile, in another turnaround from the U.S. leader, he's now planning to exempt car makers from some U.S. auto tariffs. According to the Financial Times on Thursday, the latest move would exempt car parts from the tariffs that Trump has imposed on Chinese imports over the country's fentanyl production. It also includes levies on steel and aluminum products. Washington has been collecting a 25% tax on every car not assembled in the U.S., and a 25% tax on some imported auto parts is set to go into effect early May. Meanwhile, South Korea's Industry Minister An Dok-keun said Wednesday that Seoul aims to remove the Trump administration's reciprocal tariffs. An made the remarks upon arriving in the U.S. to hold talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer for 2+2 consultations over tariff and other issues. The minister expressed optimism that the talks will allow reciprocal tariffs on Seoul to remain suspended. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, further fueling concerns over the fate of the South Korean economy, findings for the first quarter of this year show a contraction in economic activity. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, South Korea's real gross domestic product, a key indicator of the economy, shrank by 0.2% on quarter in Q1. This marks the steepest contraction since the fourth quarter of 2022, when the economy hit by the COVID-19 pandemic contracted by 0.5%. It's also the first negative growth in 3 quarters. What's more concerning is that quarterly growth has remained below 0.1% for 4 consecutive quarters, something that hasn't happened since related statistics were first compiled in 1960. Breaking it down, private consumption and government spending fell by 0.1%, while construction investment plunged 3.2% and facility investment dropped 2.1%, dragging down the overall growth. Exports declined by 1.1%, while imports dropped 2%, mostly due to falling energy imports. In fact, the Bank of Korea had already hinted at a possible contraction last week. It cited several factors, including prolonged political uncertainty at home and dampened economic sentiment triggered by U.S. tariff policies. There's also the temporary halt to construction activity and a delay in demand for high-performance semiconductors like HBM chips. Given these setbacks, South Korea's full-year growth is now expected to fall short of the Bank of Korea's February forecast of 1.5%. An updated projection is expected next month after factoring in the supplementary budget currently under review by the National Assembly and developments in global trade talks. However, one expert says that these measures alone are not enough to bring about a full economic rebound.
Korea's private consumption is worth around 5 quadrillion won in sales terms, meaning it's so large that even a 15 to 30 trillion won supplementary budget would barely lift the growth rate by 0.5 percentage points. As for trade talks with the U.S., favorable terms for Seoul won't mean much if global demand remains sluggish.
To raise the growth rate by more than 1 percentage point, he emphasized Korea must revive domestic consumption and a cut in value-added tax could be key to that effort. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Acting President Han Duck-soo was at the Parliament earlier on this Thursday morning to seek support for the government's supplementary budget plan. Our National Assembly correspondent Shin Ha-young covers his address to lawmakers.
Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo urged the National Assembly to swiftly pass the supplementary 12.2 trillion Korean won, or about $8.5 billion budget proposal. In a speech to the Assembly on Thursday, Han said small business owners and vulnerable groups urgently needed support as the global economy faces growing uncertainty due to U.S. tariff policies.
When responding to a crisis, timing is just as important as policy. The time for government financial support to reach those in urgent need is now.
The government submitted its extra budget plan to the National Assembly on Tuesday. It includes $2.2 billion to protect people's lives and property from large-scale natural disasters such as the deadly wildfires that hit the southeastern regions last month. Another $3 billion is set aside to ease trade risks and support high-tech industries, including AI. And an additional $2.9 billion will go towards stabilizing people's livelihoods. Han's speech marks the first time since 1979 that an acting president has given a budget speech to the Assembly. Han's speech drew a mixed reaction from the rival parties. Before the speech, the Democratic Party criticized it as an attempt to raise Han's political profile, saying it shouldn't be used as a step toward a presidential run. Han has so far maintained an ambiguous stance on whether he will run for president. As he began speaking, DP lawmakers remained silent in protest, although there was some booing. Meanwhile, the People Power Party applauded Han after the speech and pledged to help quickly pass the budget. However, the rival parties clashed again when National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik openly criticized Han, bringing up his nominations for 2 Constitutional Court justices.
The acting president needs to handle his duties responsibly. I'm saying this as the Speaker of the National Assembly, on behalf of the people.
In response, PPP lawmakers strongly protested while DP lawmakers applauded. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
We turn now to the latest on partisan primaries. Amid prospects that the final 2 candidates for the presidential race will be named by next week. For more, I have our political correspondent Kim Do-yeon live on the line. Do-yeon, welcome back. So I hear contenders of the Democratic Party, Do-yeon, are currently in the southwestern part of the country.
That's right, Sunny. The voting for the DP members in what's known as the Honam region, the traditional stronghold of the DP, is going on at the moment. The Honam region consists of the Jeollado provinces and Gwangju City. Frontrunner Lee Jae-myung visited Jeollabuk-do province first when he shared his renewable energy plans, and is set to visit Gwangju City, located farther south. There, he's set to visit the May 18 pro-democratization movement sites, also meet with the mother of the late Moon Jae-hak, the real-life inspiration for Nobel laureate Han Gang's award-winning book, Human Acts. The 2 trailing candidates, Kim Kyung-soo and Kim Dong-yeon, are also in the region today, visiting key local points to meet as many people as possible. The voting in this region closes on Saturday with the results coming out on that day. Meanwhile, the last set of regions for voting, the capital region, Gangwon-do province, and Jeju, started today. This wraps up on Sunday as well, when the final winner will be announced at the party's convention.
Right, Sunday, which would be the 27th of April, Do-yeon. Meanwhile, the much-anticipated one-on-one debates among contenders of the People Power Party have begun, Do-yeon.
That's right, Sunny. At the moment, Kim Moon-soo and Han Dong-un are in the first of 4 one-on-one debates, with the PPP race having no clear frontrunner. These second-round debates are expected to be crucial. The two started off with a heated debate on the rule of law, targeting DP's likely candidate Lee Jae-myung's allegations. In addition, as Kim is known to have been against Yoon's impeachment and Han was pro-impeachment, Kim questioned Han about his fallen relationship with former President Yoon. One thing to keep an eye for the PPP race is this aspect, as some PPP electors still support Yoon. And for the second round, the votes will be 50% PPP electors and 50% on open survey, giving more weight to individual PPP electors. Keep in mind also, the one-on-one partners were picked by the four candidates, and the current one is led by Kim Moon-soo, as it's his slot. At 5:30, the second one starts, and An picked Kim Moon-soo. Han Dong-un and Hong Jun-pyo picked each other for their slots on Friday, making their debate a 3-hour-long one. That's it for now. Reporting live from the National Assembly, this is Kim Do-yeon.
A former U.S. defense official under the Clinton administration believes the alliance between Seoul and Washington is the foundation of security here in Asia and that it should not be sidetracked by tensions over trade. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young shares his thoughts.
The South Korea-U.S. alliance is the cornerstone of military deterrence in Northeast Asia, and trade friction must not weaken it. That's the view of John Hamre, President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies and former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense, as Seoul and Washington begin a crucial round of high-stakes tariff talks in D.C. With U.S. duties on foreign steel, autos and aluminium still unresolved, along with new 10% baseline tariffs on all imports, Hamre says preserving strategic trust between the two allies is more important now than ever. While President Donald Trump's 90-day delay on rolling out country-specific tariffs has created room for dialogue with trading partners, expectations of a major breakthrough may be overly optimistic.
What I've heard from other governments that have had conversations on tariffs is that there are four things that are non-negotiable. The 10% base tariff is non-negotiable. The tariff on 25% on aluminum, 25% on steel is non-negotiable. That they've been told the tariff on cars and automobile parts is non-negotiable.
Still, Hamre sees an opening, especially for South Korea and Japan, to make meaningful progress. Acting President Han Duck-soo has called for a win-win solution, suggesting Korean shipyards could help boost America's naval vessel capacity. Seoul could also buy more U.S. liquefied natural gas and aircraft, and even address non-tariff barriers such as platform fees and pharmaceutical pricing.
Korea and Japan have sophisticated government agencies. So I think that you have an opportunity to, take advantage of this early moment. I think you're very fortunate as a nation to have an acting president who was a trade negotiator. I mean, he knows how these things go. He knows what the dynamic is like. He has a very good understanding of the Korean economy. So I think you are in, compared to most countries, pretty good condition for taking forward these conversations.
President Trump has suggested a one-stop shopping deal that presumably merges trade and defense cost sharing into a single package. However, Seoul believes security contributions and trade issues should be handled separately. In a new bilateral deal last year, South Korea had already agreed to hike its share of defense costs to support U.S. military presence on the peninsula.
Personally, I don't think it's easier to find a solution to either the tariff issue or the security issue if we put them together. Korea's spending almost 3% on its defense, and therefore that should be good enough on tariffs. So I do think it's probably important to focus on the foundational question of why is the alliance important. And I think you'll find a lot of support among American politicians for that.
The significance of these impending talks goes beyond figures. They speak volumes about the current U.S. posture over the first 3 months of Trump's second presidency. Rather than reinforcing alliance principles or addressing regional security issues, Washington has doubled down on a transactional approach with its partners.
And in my view, the U.S.-Korea alliance is the absolute foundation of security in Asia. If we're together, there won't be war. If we fall apart, I'm very worried about the future. So I hope we can stay together.
As talks begin, the consultations will not only be a test of trade policy, but of the strength and trust underpinning one of America's most vital alliances in the Indo-Pacific. Arirang, Arirang News.
Over at the Vatican, tens of thousands of mourners are lining up to bid farewell to Pope Francis, whose body now lies in state that is, at St. Peter's Basilica. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
Thousands of people queue in St. Peter's Square to say a last farewell to Pope Francis. After his body was brought to St. Peter's Basilica, tens of thousands are offering their final goodbye over the 3 days of public mourning.
Yeah, it was a very, very moving experience to see him so vulnerable after so long, being so unwell. A real pleasure and privilege to be there. The queuing was difficult, but kind of worth it in the end. So a pleasure to be there.
We knew there were many people, so we approached this with calmness. It's an opportunity to be able to pray for our Pope.
Pope Francis' body, dressed in red vestments and a white mitre, was displayed lying at an angle on a simple wooden coffin. Unlike in the past, his coffin was placed lower, closer to the ground, reflecting his humility and his love for the poor and vulnerable. Italian media outlets reported that more than 100,000 people were waiting to enter, with lines so long that people had to wait at least 4 hours to pay their respects inside the basilica. The Vatican initially planned to accept mourners until midnight on the first day. On the second day, public mourning will be allowed from 7 a.m. to midnight local time, and on the final day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It also stated that the hours could be extended depending on the crowd size. Pope Francis' funeral mass will be held on April 26th at 10 a.m. local time in St. Peter's Square. The conclave, the secret meeting of cardinals, is expected to take place between May 5th and 10th. According to the Associated Press, Cardinal Lazaro Yu-Hung-shik, the only Korean to attend this conclave, predicted that the meeting would end earlier than expected. Cardinal Yu added, "Let us watch and see the will of the Lord." When asked if the next pope could come from Asia, he answered, "The Lord does not distinguish between East and West." He is currently serving as the Vatican prefect of the dicastery for the clergy and was recently listed among the 12 leading candidates for the next pope by Italy's largest daily newspaper, Corriere della Sera. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, a tech trade show currently underway here in Seoul is demonstrating the tangible presence of AI in modern homes and workplaces to promote comfort and convenience. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin reports.
An AI-generated human dances to a K-pop beat against a traditional Hanok courier backdrop, inviting others to join in. South Korea has put AI in the spotlight at its biggest ICT show as the country pushes to lead the global race in the technology. The 2025 World IT Show, which will be held for 3 days, kicked off on Thursday in Seoul under the slogan, "Driving Digital Transformation with AI." And the products from a record 400-plus companies from Korea and abroad show that AI is already embedded in almost every part of our daily lives, from AI assistants to our cars. LG Electronics is offering visitors a chance to experience the company's upcoming AI-powered mobile home system that comes with an assistant that can identify visual information to pick out and summarize books. And when you draw pictures on a pad, it's able to create and narrate stories based on those pictures.
아침에 적절한 온도를 설정하고 집안의 식물들에게 물을 주고.
And because AI is such an integral part of the future, LG Electronics, a consumer electronics giant, is now even expanding its reach into smart mobility through in-vehicle systems.
We believe that the future lies in developing AI so it's integrated into every part of our environment, including cars.
SK Telecom is also showcasing how AI can enhance everyday life with tools designed to boost work efficiency. Its AI-powered assistant acts like a virtual participant in meetings, listening to conversations using natural language processing to identify key points and generating a concise summary that includes what was discussed and who attended.
Both foreign and domestic companies see AI investment as a necessity, not a choice. That's why we wanted to showcase how AI is transforming and will continue to transform our daily lives.
But these AI breakthroughs and those to come are only possible through semiconductors. That's why companies like Telechips, a local semiconductor firm, are advancing AI technologies for automobiles to meet rising demand, while also focusing on localization to stay competitive amid growing trade pressures.
There are global risks in the supply chain stemming from trade tensions between major world powers. So it's important to produce locally, which we think is our biggest strength right now.
He added this has let the company supply major clients like Hyundai without trade disruptions, part of a growing shift towards self-reliance as firms avoid import risk regions to stay competitive in the global AI race. 이수진, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the Middle East, Hamas has released a new video showing an Israeli hostage in his 40s who had been abducted during the October 2023 attacks. The footage provides a hint into the conditions of hostages held in Gaza as negotiations for their release continue. In the nearly 3-minute video released on Wednesday, 48-year-old Omri Miran is seen walking through a tunnel in Gaza and lighting a candle to mark his birthday. He explains in front of the camera in Hebrew his life after more than 18 months in captivity. According to the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, Miran's identity was verified by his family. Miran's family did not authorize the publication of the video, but they agreed to share a screenshot of it. Meanwhile, the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, has called Hamas sons of dogs and demanded that the group release the hostages. Following the deadly attack by militants in Kashmir, which claimed the lives of 26 tourists, India has announced it will take diplomatic and security measures against Pakistan. Those measures include the closure of a main border crossing, the downgrading of ties, and the suspension of a water treaty. On Tuesday, gunmen opened fire on tourists near Pahalgam, a popular tourist site in Kashmir, killing 26 and injuring dozens. In response, India has downgraded diplomatic relations with Pakistan and suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, a critical water-sharing agreement established in 1960. Additionally, India has closed its main border with Pakistan and expelled Pakistani military advisors from New Delhi. India's defense minister promised a very loud response to the perpetrators. Pakistan has denied involvement in the attack and expressed concern over the loss of life, calling for a National Security Council meeting to discuss the situation. In Turkey, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck near Istanbul on Wednesday at 12:49 p.m. local time, injuring more than 200 people during a public holiday in the country. The quake's epicenter was located in the Sea of Marmara, approximately 40 kilometers southwest of Istanbul. The tremor lasted about 13 seconds and was followed by over 100 aftershocks, including one of 5.9 magnitude. Officials say at least 236 people are being treated in hospitals, primarily due to injuries suffered while jumping from buildings in panic. Authorities received over 300 reports of structural damage in buildings. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan expressed relief that the situation was manageable and extended prayers for the nation's safety. Finally, in the United States, nominations for the 2025 American Music Awards were announced on Wednesday local time. Rapper Kendrick Lamar topped the nominations with 10 nods, including Artist of the Year and Song of the Year for his Grammy-winning diss track, Not Like Us. Post Malone followed closely with 8 nominations, notably entering country categories for the first time. Taylor Swift garnered 6 nominations, aiming to extend her record of 40 AMA wins and 7 Artist of the Year titles. Artists such as Benson Boone and Tyla were also first-time nominees this year. The event, hosted by Jennifer Lopez, will air live in Las Vegas on May 26th. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It was hot like early summer today, exceeding 25 degrees Celsius around the Gyeongsangdo provinces. Daegu rose up to 26 degrees, about 10 degrees higher than yesterday. However, the temperature in the west, including Seoul, dropped to 20 degrees. As the cold air comes down from the northwest from tonight, it will get chillier tomorrow, with Seoul dropping to the single digits, only 8 degrees. In addition, winds are also blowing strongly across the country again. Strong winds of around 50 meters per second will continue. The atmosphere in the eastern parts of the country will gradually become dry as well. Please take extra precautions not to cause any fires. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at 4 degrees, Daejeon and Gyeongju at 7 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 70 to 20 degrees all over the country. A chilly morning will continue until early next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching.